Good afternoon and welcome to Insights LinkedIn Live today and our panel discussion around our partnership with Cisco and ThousandEyes. My name is Sam Claus. I'm a Business Development Manager and Evangelist for all things Cisco here at Insight. And today we're going to be exploring the role of ThousandEyes in the network infrastructure of our customers and where we can see value for that. So if you don't know, ThousandEyes is a leading network intelligence platform. It helps businesses see, understand, and look to improve their digital experience and their connected experience across all platforms, whether that be hybrid, on-premise, or multi-cloud. So as we go through today's LinkedIn Live, please do use the chat function throughout to ask any questions you've got. Scan the QR code if you'd like to speak with us directly, and we can field any questions you've got. But with me today is we do have one of my colleagues, Vijay Mistry, a tech enthusiast and expert from ThousandEyes, and he's going to be here to discuss what we mean by connected experiences, what ThousandEyes can bring to organisations, and how it's revolutionising the business world. So Vijay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey Sam, thanks so much for the introduction. I appreciate that. Yeah, so good afternoon everybody. I am, as you say, a tech enthusiast, but my primary role is as a channel account manager looking after a product set called ThousandEyes and working with the channel. That's pretty much what I do. Fantastic.
Well, thank you for coming along today, and as I say, thank you for everyone to joining us remotely. Vijay, do you want to kind of give us a bit of an overview on ThousandEyes, what it is, what it means for customers, and I guess how it's helping organisations at the moment?
Yeah, so I guess if we start by kind of painting a picture on what the challenges out there in terms of what customers are experiencing when it comes to this thing called network assurance or full stack observability, maybe another terminology that many people have bounced around. As our customers move more and more into a cloud-first strategy, yes, hybrid's still around, and quite a few customers are still having an on-prem, as you know, depending on the environment that you're in. But cloud-first strategy is the way forward. So the application stack now has completely changed. You know, we don't go back into an HE environment, log in, and if there's an issue, then typically the support team could identify the issue with either if it's a desktop device or it's the application, which is typically sitting in the same environment, right? It's downstairs in the comms room, and we can get the issue resolved and get it connected. But that stack has now completely moved out of that comms room infrastructure. It's now moved into a third-party environment. So typically, our cloud providers, AWS, Azure, and the list goes on. So that's all great from a sustainability perspective. You know, you're going a bit greener. You're not using as much electricity to run a comms room infrastructure. And the network now is, you know, from a support perspective, it's not as simple, because now what's happening is that application stack and the server infrastructure is now moved out. So the network guys now have to manage two elements of that connectivity piece, not just the LAN that they managed, that they owned and they can visibly see, but to ensure this digital supply for their employees to get connection to the SaaS-based environment, they have to now manage this thing called the internet, right? So the transition is now moving that way. It's great from a sustainability perspective, but from a network management perspective, an issue does occur. And the issue is typically what happens when the employees can't connect. So that's kind of the challenge, kind of painting the challenge out there. Does that make sense?
It does, and I guess the convergence of all these applications, as you say, into these hybrid and multi-cloud environments, having a central point of focus where people can see everything and understand what they've got and how it all connects together, is probably where ThousandEyes comes into its own as kind of that glue holding all these applications and this infrastructure together.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. And so one, you know, that now causes, you know, creates another set of challenges, right? So, you know, when you're now managing an infrastructure that's now not in your control, but it's sitting somewhere else in a third-party environment, you need to make sure that this network assurance is maintained as best as possible. And when there's an outage or a downtime, that then we start to do the root cause analysis, which obviously kicks in. But because it's not our own network anymore, the employees don't actually control that network, i.e. the internet, we're dependent on third-party agencies. So the cost of downtime, so not being able to connect now to an environment, I think last year's figure was to the tune of $700 billion, right? $700 billion was the cost of downtime. Why are the figures so high? Because as I say, we're moving, you know, our customers are moving more and more towards a cloud space for a strategy, which then causes that creation, because obviously we can't connect and we've got an issue. So the challenge is how then do we help our customers quickly identify across this domain called the internet, which we don't control anymore, where the issue is between domain and target URL.
Yeah.
So, and that $700 billion cost, and kind of just refer back to it, the bulk of that was associated with our third-party providers, right? So we all control the LAN, and we know what's going on from the network ops side, but the minute we traverse across the outside world, we're now dependent, and then in the lap of the gods, the ISPs of the world, who then provide a certain level of SLA, and depending on how quickly they can then identify where the connection is actually broken, will then determine how long it is before your employees can connect back into those applications and then do their day job and get on with what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, right? And I guess from like an internal service desk perspective within customer networks and customer organisations, they're fielding phone calls from users saying we can't connect to Exchange, or we can't connect to our emails, or to this third-party provider. And as you say, it's in the lap of the gods.
Absolutely,
right? Where that's broken. So do you want to just talk us through a little bit more around how ThousandEyes can kind of address that and what's involved in that process?
Absolutely. So kind of just leading on from painting the picture of what the challenges out there, and the network guys will get it in the neck. In the minute there's a downtime connection issue, it's usually network ops, help desk, the first people usually say, right, can't connect. Blame the network, right? And yeah, okay, they're under an awful lot of pressure these days because the applications are now sitting in a third-party world. So we need to help those guys find these problems quickly in an environment which is typically what was the blind spot, which is the internet. And we're going to try and bring that blind spot and get rid of that blind spot and make that more visible to our network op people so that we can identify where the actual link is broken. So typically what we do in ThousandEyes, and what ThousandEyes now allows you to do from a network ops perspective, is actually give a little bit more control back to the network ops guys. Like when they had in the old days, when they had total sort of control over the LAN and the application state. But now bringing that visibility back and a little bit more control and owned by the network ops guys, rather than depending on the third party to then identify the issue for them. And the way we do this is typically we will run what we call a synthetic test between the domain where the actual license is installed out to the target URL, or we can go one step further and run a synthetic test from the actual laptop device. So we install the agent on the laptop device and then do root cause analysis from the laptop all the way out to the target. And the way we do that is we run a series of what we call synthetic testing. So it's actually as if the actual agent is actually connecting, but it's a synthetic test. And as that test goes across and traverses across the internet and back, comes back into the dashboard, what it brings back is a very granular, fact-based view of exactly how that connection is traversing across this thing called the internet, who the service providers are, because there's multiple service providers between domain and target, and more importantly, where the actual link is broken and which service providers got the issue. That's the root cause.
So it's literally that complete end-to-end visibility from when a user fires up an application and connects on their network all the way through to wherever it needs to go.
The target, and it's a global sort of setup, so it doesn't matter where the URL is. So what we're doing is we're saying, point this service to the URL that you want to monitor, and then run those tests, right? And it will then obviously go across the internet and find the dedicated URL and do what we call a ping. It's probably the basic way of putting it, but it's actually a bit more than a ping. It's a full-blown synthetic test. And because we're able to then pick that information up in a very granular format, latency, jitter, all sorts of things, even delays between hops, that now becomes a lot more visible to the network ops guys. So and all of a sudden, instead of depending on a third party, like your service provider, to then come back to you and say, yeah, look, Mr. Customer, Mr. Vijay, your network's gone down because here. In a matter of minutes of running that test, I can now very, very quickly identify where the link's actually broken. So it's a root cause analysis product as opposed to the fix.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, and it's quite an interesting thing because when you look at ThousandEyes as an organisation and the way they publicise some of the outages that they see out there, on Twitter and LinkedIn and things like that.
Absolutely.
I think it really opens your eyes to how this becomes much more predictive than having that reactive service of someone's screaming down the phone saying, I cannot connect, I can't do this, what's the matter? I guess it follows that methodology and that plan of Cisco's view of having a holistic approach to creating a bit of predictability about your infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. And because this, the word observability now is probably just as important as making sure the application is up and running at its optimum level. Getting to the application, because obviously now sitting in a third-party environment is now just as critical as actually running the application itself, right? Depending on what industry you're in. Obviously there are some more severe industries compared to none. So if you talk, for example, a retail environment, the most important part of a retail environment clearly is the till. right? The till does kind of two basic transactions. One is to the EPOS system, and then the other one's to the PCI, credit card companies. Now, if the till can't transact, that particular environment is actually going to start to lose a lot of customers, and it happens on a regular basis because that till is dependent on a connection outside their environment to the actual sort of central location where the SaaS is based. So that's severe. So that connection is really, really important, right? If you go then into the NHS world, a lot of the applications that they consume are typically sitting in a third-party environment. Again, it could be, making a decision, right down to do we actually start the operation or don't we, or do we administer this drug or don't we? And if you can't get that information in time, it could be quite detrimental to the patient and to the doctor as well. So I guess depending on what industry you're in and the severity of that connection will then determine how important that connection is to you, right? But let's be factual about it. We are now, dependent heavily on ensuring that connection between domain or device to target URL is, one, maintained as much as we can, as best we can, but more importantly, if it breaks, then we as the company need to identify that issue very, very quickly and then apply the fix.
So one of the interesting things you talked about there is obviously the third-party service providers.
Yeah.
And some of the use cases that you talked about there with retail, with kind of NHS.
Sure.
Are you seeing this sort of spread to majority of businesses, majority of organisations out there, or are you seeing some specific use cases that every customer needs to address?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? We're starting to see, I think, the word observability is quite a new one, like all trends.
Yeah.
I've been with Cisco a number of years, hence the lack of it. But, I've seen trends come and go, and this one certainly has an awful lot more visibility, not just in the world of Cisco, but also outside. If you think that the product that we've got, ThousandEyes, it runs its own operating system, it runs on its own source code, so it's not dependent on a Cisco operating system to run the device. To run the software. But in terms of where it's going, in terms of the customer base, I think, I get the question asked, which vertical is it more applicable to than other verticals? And my kind of response back to that is, well, hold on, just find out how many SaaS environments the customer's connected to, whether they're a banking environment, or whether they're a retail environment, or their services, and how important is that connection to that particular environment. That will determine whether ThousandEyes is going to be applicable or not, right? Now, again, depending on the severity of that connection, will then determine how important that connection is to that particular environment. So some customers are quite happy, just like, it's an HR system we can do with a couple of hours of downtime, not a problem at all, right? But you're finding those customers less and less. So even the small businesses, in today's world, have a cloud-first strategy. They're consuming infrastructure from AWS and Azure, because, putting infrastructure on-prem is quite expensive.
Yeah.
So, they'll always go for that cloud-first strategy. So access the application, do their day job. It's going to be applicable to an SMB as much as it's applicable to, a finance house. So it's pretty much across the board, I'd say.
Yeah, I guess it's, as you say, everyone's driving towards this cloud-first strategy, and everyone's looking at multi-cloud environments and this kind of hybrid world where, access to data and access to the information they need to get it at any point, at any time, right?
Exactly.
And it's vital to the the kind of lifeblood of their organisation.
It's detrimental. Nowadays, I think if you look at the finance houses, the banking industry, if that link, if they can't access the banking application, I believe there's a fairly hefty fine from the ombudsman that manages, that looks after these banks, that if a connection to accessing the banking application is not kind of switched back on with a certain given time, and it's only a matter of, I think it's an hour or so, there's a 7-figure fine associated to the bank, because it's part of their protocol to provide that service to their customers. So you can imagine network downtime, a war room situation the CTO is getting in the neck. He's going to bring everybody that's associated with keeping that connection going into a room. And then you get into this what we call the MTTI, it's a mean time to an instance kind of conversation. Well, is it me? Is it me? Is it you? Is it you? Well, one of you needs to fix this issue, find out what the hell it is. It's usually the network that usually gets in the neck because it's a connectivity issue, right? And what we do with ThousandEyes, we're trying to alleviate that. And you say, well, hold on, we've actually found the issue. We know exactly where it is. The actual issue sits with a specific service provider or a CDN provider, whoever it is. And we're now actually in communications with those individuals to try and get the connection back up and running. So
it's fair to say that that ThousandEyes, it's not just like this reactive tool that is there to try and solve those issues, as you say. It's that root cause analysis piece. How do you see it leveraging some of the data and the analytics that it kind of it sees and the
it's pulling
information
through. Yeah.
and it pulls through.
So look, we're an open-ended API functionality as well. And when the application is not a closed book, we will absolutely work with third-party manufacturers of a variety of products like that do this kind of monitoring or something similar to this. So if you look at, for example, your infrastructure monitoring as opposed to network monitoring, so your SNMP protocols, things like SolarWinds and I think Logic Monitor is another one. And forgive me, I don't know those products that well, but we will complement that very much so. If you have a middleware telemetry solution, where it's pulling in a variety of different alerts from different packages, for example, multi-factor authentication, your internet security like Umbrella Duo, you can also pull in sort of telemetry from ThousandEyes and then give you this single dashboard view. If there is a single dashboard in this world. And yeah, you can now start to talk about that. We're the integration piece now from a Cisco perspective, just while we're talking about the integration, it's pretty much now running across the board. So we went live with Meraki. So if you're a Meraki user out there, we've gone live with the MX product. So you can now use ThousandEyes do root cause analysis from the MX product. Yeah, we've gone into the Room WebEx OS system. So our WebEx platform, our conferencing solutions now have actually got that ThousandEyes agent installed in it, so you can do root cause analysis from
Which is
device.
an interesting use case, right? Because everyone now is so used to video and collaborating together, having a bit pixelated view on the screen in front of you and having that real lack of continuity and experience.
Absolutely.
Experience from a video perspective.
You talk about collaboration, we can pinpoint on that. And if you think about our customers now using MS Teams as the primary voice functionality as well as video and IM now, the world of PBX is pretty much either dying or it's dead, right? And they've moved completely to a full-blown on-premise soft phone type setup. A telephone call now typically occurs through MX Teams or WebEx, depending which platform, or Zoom. Doesn't really matter. If that link goes down, the impact on that particular individual and the business is quite severe, right? So even if you get all the fancy other applications they're running, just stick to the collaboration piece. It very much is important now to ensure that the connectivity, as well as the application, is both monitored and maintained and controlled by the actual company themselves, rather than depending on a third-party agency.
Yeah. So like you said earlier on, it's about that assurance, isn't it? It's about
network assurance.
In layman's terms, I suppose, like the plumbing is up to scratch, and it can deliver the performance and the applications and the things you need to function as a business.
Yeah, and because the plumbing now belongs to somebody else, i.e. the service providers, we don't always have access to it. We have to depend on third-party people to tell us what the hell's going on in the plumbing, so to speak. With ThousandEyes, it kind of brings that control back in to the network ops guys, and now they do have access to it. They can see where the issues are occurring between them and the actual sort of target URL. So yeah, hence the word ThousandEyes. It's actually gaining visibility for something they didn't have visibility of prior to coming into this world.
So what's the kind of entry point then for ThousandEyes in terms of, we've talked a lot about the different applications, different service providers, and some of the use cases around collaboration.
Yeah.
Where are you seeing the majority of your customers dipping their toe in the water?
Sure. Yeah, I guess if we were to verticalize where we're probably seeing the biggest wins, or the kind of activity on a high level, clearly the finance sector is now, all the banks, I believe, my understanding is they've actually now got ThousandEyes in their infrastructure to monitor that. A lot of the insurance companies are now seeing that, especially from the website side of things, rather than the application, so the inside-out view, or the outside-in view when you've got customers coming into your website.
So they're thinking about it very much from a customer, their users and the people buying their service.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, so consumption-based. If you take, if you do the comparison websites, for example, a lot of those customers have got customer-facing websites where you can actually then buy the actual insurance, consume that particular application. If a particular domain area can't access that particular application, they're losing customers hand over fist. So what you can do with ThousandEyes is actually have that root cause analysis done as well. So not just talking about inside out, which is what we discussed mainly, but you can actually now use our cloud agents to then jump on and point back into your URL and start to identify in a particular area if there's a complaint coming through. So it's just, all right, Manchester's now got an issue, can't get to a website, and all of a sudden you get silly tweets coming through on Twitter and LinkedIn, that's why they start complaining. This way, you can actually use ThousandEyes to very quickly identify that particular area, domain area, has actually gone down, and then start to do a root cause analysis of why it's gone down.
So you can start to understand your customer's journey.
Yeah.
And what's important for them and where their pain points are as they're trying to access you as a
Absolutely, yeah. So you know, you've got both sides of the fence here. I mean, the majority of our customers want it from an inside-out perspective. You know, they want to manage, they want to create this digital supply chain experience.
Yeah.
I think I heard a terminology recently. The word SLA means service level agreement. Well, I think about 2 months ago, XLA. Now, I don't know if you've heard that.
No.
But it actually stands for experience level agreement, as opposed to service level agreement, right?
Sense.
Now, experience level agreement, question mark, what does that actually mean? Well, if you go back into our world, it is going back to that digital supply chain experience of the employees that they're trying to connect to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so providing network assurance. So it's very, you know, it becomes very relevant. It's just, we still get to the right people and talk to the right, you know, people within these organizations, because trust me, it's a pain point for them.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point, isn't it? It's not always just about your users. It's not just about your internal infrastructure and what, you know, what someone's trying to do and access an internal application.
Yeah.
It's around what works for your business as your front-facing, your shop window, effectively.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that, as you say, you know, if you think about the online world in terms of the consumption of the online world, you know, we're pretty much now online in every company's got some kind of online presence, right? Whether it's a flat website that just gives you information, or typically a consumable website where you can actually start to buy services, you know, and consume. Those websites that are just as important to be available on 24/7.
And as consumers, right, we're fickle. If we can't get what we need right here, right now, we will go somewhere
else.
Our
attention span, you know, 8 seconds on a web page. If it doesn't refresh within 8 seconds, then you've got to find another website that's actually going to do that for you. So it's paramount that those sites are, one, up and running, and number two, that they're accessible to the customer audience they're trying to reach to. And if they're not, then we have to quickly identify why and where the link's gone down between domain environment and the actual URL as well. Yeah, it's becoming even more important.
Yeah. So what's the starting point then in terms of a customer embarking on a journey with ThousandEyes? I guess there's an element of trying to understand where they are and benchmark what they've got at the moment. Sure.
Yeah. I think if you look at the fundamental basics, you know, if I was a customer now looking at this kind of functionality, thinking, this could be quite interesting from our perspective. I guess, you know, it's a scoping conversation. You know, every case is going to be different. Yeah. You know, you can't put one against the other and say, yeah, that's a generalistic situation. I guess from a customer's perspective, they probably need to look at how many URLs that are critical to them in terms of accessibility. That's really, really important to identify that in that scoping conversation. And then how frequently do you then want to do that testing to make sure that URL is accessible? Will then start to generate typically what the structure of the pricing is going to look like, right? So where would you start? That's the base level as you would start, and then it goes into like probably right if there's an appetite now to look at this in more detail. Proof of value is absolutely the way forward.
Yeah.
Right. Proof of value. Get this into the customer. Let them play around with it. You know, get it installed. There is a trial license available for our customers to download. It's a 15-day trial. Or from your perspective, we can give you a full extended version of that trial. I think the best way of showing and demonstrating this outside of obviously doing a demonstration on the dashboard is actually getting into a customer, let them actually see the power and the benefit, what ThousandEyes can bring from them from a network assurance perspective.
And it's delivered via, you talked about earlier on, single pane of glass dashboard.
Yeah, it's a single dashboard. You know, there's multiple features within the dashboard. You've got waterfalls and a variety of other things you look at. But if you're a Meraki customer, I guess the look and feel is something similar to the Meraki dashboard. It's the very similar sort of GUI, but it is a single dashboard that you then log into and then start to understand what the hell is going on between your world and the target you are trying to reach. But yeah, POV, proof of value, absolutely. In terms of timelines and getting a POV done, I think once you've got through all the red tape of installing a new piece of software in, which is probably more longer than the actual POV itself, you know, the implementation of the license is not encumbersome. You know, I'm not an engineer, but say an hour and a half typically installed on a dedicated server, dedicated PC.
So would there be an element of like, installing agents onto endpoints, for example?
Yeah, so if you look at the inside-out view, it's a physical installation. So if it's a domain environment out, you actually install the license on some kind of x86 platform. So a dedicated server, you know, low-level Raspberry Pi type device, put it where the internet breakout is, and then point to the URL. If you want to go one step further and you want to monitor the devices, so the client devices, did you physically install the license on the actual laptop itself, and then do the root cause analysis from there? So you can do it both ways depending on how you would want to do it, and then you're ready to run. So yeah, an hour, probably 2 hours of somebody's sort of time to do the PS piece and configure it, and off you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
as you say, it's important to do that scoping, I think.
Absolutely,
initially,
yeah.
Which is somewhere where Insight can help in terms of our consultancy and our professional services teams. We're working with customers at the moment in terms of that digital experience and trying to understand exactly what is important for them, important for their customers, and kind of set those objectives.
Absolutely,
for success, right?
It really is. You've got to get to the right personas within your customer base to make sure this is going to be relevant. Because if you're talking to people typically outside the network, service delivery people, okay, there will be influencers. They may also hold the purse strings as well, right? But where the pain point really exists is typically within that environment where they're the individuals or the teams that are looking after connectivity between domain and the target URL they're trying to connect to. That's typically where ThousandEyes will really start to become beneficial if we were to look into it. Yeah.
Can you give us any sort of other sort of real-world examples of, you touched on the retail world earlier on?
Yeah, so we have
finance piece.
Absolutely, we've got plenty of, I guess, online, sort of authorized case studies and some not so authorized. Yeah, the one that comes to mind is EasyJet. It's publicised. It's officially, it's out there on the ether, so you can have a look at it. Again, this is prior to me joining, so I couldn't give you the full details. But they're now absolutely hell-bent on using ThousandEyes as part of their SLA. They had some challenges around providing ticketing information on some of their terminals, and they just couldn't establish exactly where the main issues were occurring. So running ThousandEyes into the infrastructure between their SaaS environments and their front desk sitting typically in the airports, they were able to then isolate exactly where the issues and delays were occurring, implement ThousandEyes. All of a sudden, those transactions became a lot more efficient and a lot more secure as well, right? Because you put a bit of security on top of that, you've got a very efficient connection. And if it went down, then ThousandEyes was able to identify the issue in minutes rather than potentially hours and maybe days, where they could be losing an awful lot of money.
And I guess it's helped them build that business continuity, right? In terms of
they're
understanding where else can they put resilience in their network to avoid those.
What tends to happen once you've got the POV and you've tried it out with a couple of URLs or a single URL, the information that comes back typically over we say run it 3 to 4 weeks, which gives you a good enough time to pick up any potential issues that occur in between your world and the SaaS world. The minute they see the value coming through and think, oh my God, wow, okay, we've identified an issue here. What tends to happen, it starts to grow like a snowball effect. Think, hold on, if we're using it for this particular URL, well, there's a bunch of URLs over here which could be quite critical to us now, or becoming critical. Right, let's get more small licenses up there. So all of a sudden, from a resale perspective, there's a what I call a snowball effect that could very easily occur. But the key thing is demonstrating it to the customer in their own environment. Like anything, you want to almost try the thing out yourself before you go and buy it. Right? I think this is the best way of showing what ThousandEyes can do for you.
Yeah, for sure. And as I say, I think that's a really important thing. And I think from our perspective, we can certainly work with any of our customers, any of you guys looking and watching online, with some more bespoke dashboard demonstrations, if you'd like to see those and see the software and trial it as well. We can certainly put those sort of
absolutely. I was just saying,
together.
happy to get involved on a call. I could jump on. We can probably do this demo in about 20 minutes. Not a problem. We can cut to the chase. So right, okay, let's set the scene, and then go to the actual dashboard demo, because most people want to see the actual product.
It sounds like something you've got to see, and
you have to see it. This is quite embryonic to a lot of customers out there. There are other products out there. I'm not saying we're the only ones doing it. I guess why Cisco, acquired ThousandEyes as opposed to maybe another. Our telemetry now, our what I call WAN visibility that we've got, our agents that are cloud agents, we've probably got the biggest sort of footfall in terms of installation with all the service providers compared to many others. And that's what gives us the edge in terms of the telemetry we can pull through from an outside-in perspective, right? But we also use that telemetry, from the inside out as well. And then you combine that with the security portfolio. Talos, if you've heard of Talos, which is one of the largest security engines on the planet, we're taking telemetry out of that. Excuse me, clearly a WebEx call coming through. Great. We're taking telemetry out of that as well now. We're starting to potentially look at how we capitalize the telemetry coming out of Talos, combining with ThousandEyes and any other sort of monitoring capabilities. So App Dynamics, for example, which is the application performance monitoring tool, right? Whereas where the network piece, AppD, an acquisition that Cisco made a few years back, now gives you visibility in the application. So I guess summarizing this kind of concept, if it's not the network, it's the application that's gone down. So in this scenario, from root cause analysis, if you're the network team, you can pretty much say, okay, we've gone up to the front door of the application. We've got a clean connection between domain and the application.
Yeah.
Clearly now the issue sits in beyond that front door and look at the application, right? So with ThousandEyes, I believe we can actually do a single page load. Right. So we can almost actually knock on the door of the application, say, yeah, are you
Poke
there?
your head in and say hello.
Yeah, and say hello, exactly. So keeping it in simple terms. So we've got that capability, and then if you then add something like AppD as an example to then extend and start to interrogate the application, you can find the problem very quickly within your own control. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas you have to depend on third party when it comes to the network piece.
Yeah, it's taking that as you said earlier on, the observability piece and putting it across the full stack.
Yeah. So full stack observability. I mean, that's the terminology that's been bounced around quite a lot. We are two components of a full stack. So AppD and sort of at ThousandEyes, we're not the full stack. I mean, if you look at the Cisco full stack, it's got many other moving parts.
Yeah.
ServiceNow, ticketing systems, a variety of elasticity dashboards that we would use to then monitor our own network. 80,000 plus employees. It's a big network to monitor, and you think every time there's a ticket comes in, there's got to be a systematic approach to manage that ticket, allocate the resource. Combine that with what we've got with ThousandEyes and AppD, which now then gives you a full stack capability as well, right? So we're one component of what we call full stack observability.
But it sounds pretty compelling, Vijay, to be fair, doesn't it? It's giving customers a visibility on the network.
Yeah.
And I like the analogy of you can take it right up to the front door and you can have a little knock and have a look in and make sure everything's all right before you need to go to the next stage.
I was just going to say, if this was a little bit sort of, a new term, the easiest way to describe what ThousandEyes does is Google Maps of the world. So it's Google Maps of the internet. So if you think about what we do with Google Maps, we punch in the address, we then start driving, we get a lovely blue line because the road is nice and clean. We start off and get to like junction 12, and it goes from blue to amber and then to a solid red. So you get two things happening at that stage. Google Maps will tell you, do you want to divert and take an alternative route because the traffic is quite long. And if you then decide to stay on that route, you typically, if you can look, obviously do it safely, but if you look further up that map, Google Maps will tell you exactly on that route where the problem is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Right? It will tell you it's at junction 17. It's not just saying there's a red line. It's actually at junction 17 where the actual accident has occurred, right? So it's pinpointing along your traffic where the actual issue is. You take that concept and apply that analogy to what we do in ThousandEyes within the simplest format. We not only tell you where if there's a problem, but we also tell you where exactly the problem exists between your domain and the target URL.
A brilliant analogy.
Yeah, just keep it simple.
That's going to stick with me.
I'm trying to make it as simple as possible because sometimes it can be, we use like acronyms in Cisco and I try not to use any three-letter acronyms because it just confuses a lot of people. So if you use that Google Maps analogy, that's probably the best one I've heard so far, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, brilliant, Vijay. Thank you for that, buddy.
No worries.
I guess we're going to open the floor. Have we got any questions from our audience at all that may want to cover anything off?
Okay, what have we got?
Bear with me. Can you hear me? I'm just making sure my mic is coming through. Sorry, gents. This is trial and error. There we go. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, so we have got a couple of comments online. Manan Shah on LinkedIn. Now, you may have answered this. I've obviously been driving the technology behind the scenes and not necessarily hearing everything.
Not a problem.
But Manan's first question, which was quite early on, was why should I invest in ThousandEyes if I have a resilient WAN? We get all manner of stats from our network and third-party providers. Good to see you, Vijay, and greetings from Singapore.
Oh. Well, that's an interesting question. Why should you invest in it? I guess it really depends on how quickly your WAN service provider gives you that information. Right? It's going to be the speed of information. Yes, they should be giving you a level of SLA. But if they don't know where the actual issue is, don't forget when you're making a connection to the internet to get to a particular SaaS environment, you're not connected to one service provider. You're connected to multiple service providers who have their own SLAs within themselves, within the ISP world. So yeah, absolutely. Your first hop, which will be your first service provider, and you've got an SLA with that first service provider, they will do their best to make sure that the uptime is kept and that the connection that they're providing to you as the customer is maintained at its highest level. But if the issue doesn't sit within their environment, they're going to have to go outside their environment to find out where the connection is broken upstream to establish and provide that SLA back to you. And that time could be how long is a piece of string? It could be a couple of minutes, you're right. In many cases, hopefully from your perspective or from the customer's perspective, it is only a couple of minutes. But more often than not, it's not. And that's $700 billion. There's a reason why that number is so high. Because even though the WAN suppliers or the service provider will give you on paper an SLA, there's no way they're going to be able to guarantee what the hell is going on upstream 3 service providers down the line as to where the link's actually broken.
And I guess it then leads on to another point, doesn't it, of if you're experiencing the same issues over and over again, it's getting to that root cause analysis of why something like that is happening
On a regular basis,
If you're having it on a regular basis, you can have a resilient WAN and can keep flipping over to that, but how often are you going to have to do that? How often are you going to have to invoke some kind of BCP planning and things like that?
And going back to that question, if the service provider and the service you get from your service provider is that good and they're providing you the kind of the uptime, the SLA that they've actually said, then do you know what? Stick with them. It's fine. Not an issue. It may not. There's some saying ThousandEyes may not fit in every single scenario, but what we're finding, when I said that 700 billion, there's a cost associated to it. What we're finding is the service providers will have an SLA with you in terms of, yes, we will pick that call up and we will then give you the best SLA we can in terms of connectivity. But it's still not going to guarantee you how quickly they can fix an issue when their employees can't connect from point A to point Z, right? They'll give you the best intentions. But if the issue doesn't sit within their environment, it sits in their third party environment, now what happens?
I think we've all seen that as in that kind of service provider world, in our own experience of when there's an issue, where's the finger getting pointed? Because sometimes people don't want to admit that it's their infrastructure or their application.
So MTTI, mean times to innocence, is a kind of a terminology that's been bounced around in this particular world of observability. That's the number we've got to be looking at, right? How quickly can we identify the issue and then provide a recovery plan to get that particular connection up and running? Now, that could then create a mirage of potential opportunities, right? Okay, we have a single connection, it's a lease line coming in, we may need an SD-WAN proposition, right? We need multiple connections now because we've got dedicated one circuit. It's been good so far, but every now and then we get a glitch as more and more traffic now traverses across the internet to get to more applications. The demand on that connectivity piece also starts to increase because there's more and more apps now being generated in the SaaS environment. So those employees now need to connect to multiple apps compared to, say, maybe 3 or 4 to do their day job. And they all have different streams, they all have different data centers. And if you've got a single connection, then you may need to start looking at doing multiple connections as well. And so there's an opportunity to put an SD-WAN proposition in there. And of course, then you've got to secure it as well, right? So there's a whole raft of stuff there. So I'm hoping I've answered the question in some kind of format, but I totally get it. If your service provider is giving you that level of service and they're guaranteeing you as much uptime as they possibly can, do you know what? ThousandEyes may not be applicable. Simple as that, really.
I think you did. There was a follow-up from Manan. Again, you may have covered it, but like the root cause bit that you discussed, but that relies on intrusive data mining into third-party systems and infra. It's more of a statement, but how do you that?
It's what we're doing. It's all public domain, right? We're going across the internet, so we're not actually we're not traversing into kind of anything. And I'm not a technical person, but my understanding is it's the public domain side of what we're picking up on the dashboard. So it's just picking up the hops as to how your internet connection is actually going across from that point A to point Z, right? We had a government agency that was starting to talk about, where's the data kept, how's ThousandEyes picking this information, where's it stored, what data center it's stored as well. And we are very open book. We will tell exactly where the data stopped, what kind of data we pick up, and it's all clearly above board, right? Cisco acquired them 3 years ago. They've been running 10 years prior to that, if I'm not mistaken. So, rest assured that we're not infringing anybody's privacy or we're not touching anybody's kind of sensitive data. We're just looking at traffic that's traversing across the public domain and showing where the particular link is broken between your world and the world you're trying to get to. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Anyone?
There was one more from Alex on YouTube. Thank you, Alex. What makes Cisco ThousandEyes a better choice for monitoring the performance of SaaS applications compared to other solutions?
Oh.
Get your sales hat on, Vijay, hey?
Yeah, well, in terms of performance of SaaS applications. So if I've read that question correctly, we're not actually giving you performance of the application itself. What we're giving you is visibility between domain and the actual SaaS application itself. It's not, or getting to the front door of the application. It's not the SaaS application itself.
It's availability and assurance of
to the front door, so to speak.
Yeah, of that rather than the nitty-gritty of the performance.
Yeah, I think if I've understood the question correctly, the performance of the SaaS application will be then down to the actual APM product, which is application performance monitoring, right?
Yeah.
How good is the application performing?
Which is where something like App Dynamics...
Which is where App Dynamics or an equivalent product would then
Yeah.
fit into the equation. We will just give you visibility of that network piece between your domain environment and the target URL. So we're not an application performance monitoring tool at all. We are the network performance monitoring tool, so the NPM piece.
Yeah. So it's important to remember that, and probably the best way, like for me, is again going back to that plumbing analogy, right?
Yeah.
Is the ThousandEyes will make sure that the connections and the experience you have with the connections is the best it can be.
Yeah, and when it doesn't, and when the connection breaks, then you want to get to
Yeah.
that issue quickly. It's like classic plumbing, isn't it? Where if you think about electricity faults in a car, you've got to do root cause analysis of why there's a red light coming up on your dashboard. You plug something in, you then run a bunch of tests, and that test will then pull back. Actually, it's actually the relay that's broken in, the left-hand side of the indicator plug. Like, oh, right, we found it. So instead of thinking guesswork, like the old days of let's do a quick circuit test, is it the front light, is it the back light? No, we can now do a root cause analysis by sending out a test across the wiring loom of the car, and it will tell you actually, it's the relay that's actually sitting in the left-hand side of the indicator that's actually gone down. Bang. So you've identified the issue very quickly. Now you apply the fix.
Yeah.
So if you take that analogy and apply it to the internet connection, that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Perfect.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Any more questions, James?
No, we've done other questions.
Happy days.
Fantastic.
All right.
Well, I guess one thing I just wanted to add really was, and I know we touched on it earlier on, was that our partnership as Insight and Cisco and Insight and ThousandEyes, we can help customers along that journey, and we're here as a trusted partner to kind of work with our customers, and as I say, help them understand what that journey looks like for them, and try to scope out where something like ThousandEyes may be able to help. So,
yeah, look at the pain points, and if you've got a pain point in that environment, pick up the phone and talk to us.
Yeah.
Right? Look at the technology, and if we can help you relieve that, alleviate that pain point. I think selling technology today is it's not just selling technology. I think it's helping our customers to become a lot more efficient, probably a lot more secure, and alleviate pain points as the company grows, as the application infrastructure goes, with AI kicking in and machine learning becoming, the next kind of big bubble, Web 3.0.
Yeah.
There's a mirage of stuff that's going on out there. It's all based on applications. Yeah, it's all based on accessing applications to get a foot ahead, right? And those applications are typically sitting in a third-party environment. We have this thing called the internet to get to them. So the connectivity piece now is going to grow as much as the applications are going to grow. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Think about the pain points, and if we can help you alleviate those pain points, absolutely get in touch.
Fantastic. And as Vijay says, there's demos available on the dashboard. We've got some video links. We've got some content we can certainly provide you guys, and I'm more than happy to do some in-person or remote dashboard demos for you to try and start to see the value of where this may help your organisation. So thank you very much for your time today, Vijay. Really appreciate you coming in. And thank you for everyone remotely for listening and interacting with us today. As you can tell, we kind of love ThousandEyes. We're incredibly enthusiastic about it. And
It's a good product.
Absolutely. If you'd like the opportunity to trial it, then we can organise that for you. So reach out to me, reach out to Vijay directly, or use the links that are up on screen. And we'd absolutely love to be in touch. So
thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. And thanks for inviting me to do the overview. And the guys who are out there, have a great afternoon. And stay safe.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.
Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share. That's the one. Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you.